Sitting across from the man who broke my heart, I stared at the surrogacy contract. Dempsey wanted a child, just not with me. Now his new perfect Omega was paying me to carry their baby. I agreed out of desperation, completely unaware that pregnancy would finally unleash my hidden scent. Pen hovering over the dotted line, my hand trembled so violently I had to press my wrist against the cold mahogany table to steady it. Across from me sat Dempsey Reed, my ex-husband, looking as effortlessly devastating as the day I married him. Beside him was Connor Parker, the man who had taken my place. Connor smelled of artificial gardenias and spun sugar, a scent so cloying and perfectly engineered it made the back of my throat itch. My own scent, by contrast, was nothing. Null. Void. In our world, an Omega's worth was often judged by the sweetness of their pheromones and their ability to bear strong alpha heirs. I had failed on both counts. A severe glandular infection when I was 16 had left my scent glands permanently dormant. I presented as an Omega, but I smelled like absolutely nothing, a blank canvas that offered no comfort to an alpha's primal instincts. Dempsey had married me anyway, defying his wealthy traditional family, swearing that love was enough. 3 years later, when the top fertility specialists in the state declared my uterus a hostile environment, incapable of holding a pregnancy, love suddenly wasn't enough. The pressure from the Reed family broke us. Or rather, it broke Dempsey's resolve, and he broke me. Now, 2 years post-divorce, I was drowning. The mountain of debt from my late father's hospice care, combined with the catastrophic failure of my small bakery business, had left me facing eviction and bankruptcy. Then came the letter from Harrison and Burr Dempsey's ruthless legal team. If you need more time to read the clauses, Orlith, we can wait. Dempsey said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. His sharp jaw was tense, his dark eyes refusing to meet mine. He looked tired, the shadows under his eyes, prominent despite the impeccably tailored charcoal suit. He's had the draft for a week, Dom. Connor chimed in, resting a manicured hand on Dempsey's forearm. Connor leaned forward, his perfectly glossed lips curved into a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his cold, pale blue eyes. It's a very generous offer, Orlith. $500,000. It wipes out your debts completely and leaves you with a comfortable nest egg. All for just 9 months of your time. Connor was a perfect Omega, boasting a pedigree that matched Dempsey's, but ironically, he suffered from a rare condition that made carrying a child physically impossible. They needed a surrogate, and Connor, in an act of staggering psychological cruelty, had insisted on me. He claimed it was because my medical history showed a physical resilience to the standard surrogate hormone therapies. But I knew the truth. Connor wanted to prove a point. He wanted to parade his victory in front of me to reduce the man who was once Dempsey's husband to a mere vessel for their happiness. I understand the terms, I replied, my voice raspy. I carry the embryo created from Connor's egg and Dempsey's sperm. I relinquish all parental rights upon birth. I adhere to a strict diet, submit to weekly checkups with Dr. Pendleton, and reside in the guest wing of the Reed estate for the duration of the 3rd trimester. Actually, Connor interrupted, his cloying scent spiking with a hint of dominance. We've amended that last part. You'll move into the guest house immediately following a successful implantation. I want to ensure my baby is receiving the absolute best care from day one. You can understand a parent's anxiety, can't you, Orlith? The breath hitched in my chest, living on the estate. Spending 9 months watching them play house while my body swelled with a child I could never keep. I looked at Dempsey, silently pleading for him to intervene, to show a shred of the protective alpha instinct he used to reserve only for me. But Dempsey just stared at the legal pad in front of him, his jaw muscles feathering. "It makes logistical sense," Dempsey said quietly, still not looking at me. "My security team can monitor your safety, and Dr. Pendleton can visit discreetly. Safety, discretion, control." I swallowed the bitter bile rising in my throat. I had $0 in my checking account and a final eviction notice pinned to my apartment door. I didn't have the luxury of pride. "Fine," I whispered. I pressed the pen to the paper and signed my name. Orlith Ward. Just Ward now. Signing away my body, my dignity, and the last agonizing shreds of my broken heart. "Excellent!" Connor purred, snatching the contract the moment my pen lifted. "We start the hormone regimen on Monday. Don't be late to the clinic." As I stood up to leave, I accidentally brushed my hand against Dempsey's. A jolt of electricity snapped between our skin, and for a fraction of a second, his head snapped up. His pupils were blown wide, the dark brown irises nearly swallowed by black. His chest heaved a sudden heavy intake of breath that sounded almost like a growl, but as quickly as it happened, the mask fell back into place. He pulled his hand away as if I had burned him. "My assistant will arrange your moving boxes," Dempsey said coldly. I walked out of the law office and into the biting autumn wind, pulling my thin coat tightly around myself. I was nothing but an incubator now, a scentless, broken vessel. Or so I thought. Dr. Arthur Pendleton's private fertility clinic was a marvel of modern medicine, all sterile white surfaces, brushed steel, and the faint, reassuring hum of state-of-the-art incubators. Dr. Pendleton was an older beta, meticulously professional, and bound by strict, ironclad non-disclosure agreements. The implantation procedure was physically painless, but emotionally agonizing. Lying on the cold examination table, staring at the ceiling tiles, I felt a profound sense of dissociation as the embryo, a microscopic cluster of cells belonging to the man I still loved, and the Omega who despised me, was placed inside my womb. "Everything looks perfect, Orlith," Dr. Pendleton said, gently removing his gloves. "Your uterine lining responded beautifully to the pre-treatment. Now we wait." 3 weeks later, the blood test confirmed it. I was pregnant. Moving into the Reed Estate's guest house felt like walking into a gilded cage. The stone cottage sat on the edge of the sprawling property, separated from the main mansion by a lavish garden. It was beautiful, stocked with every comfort imaginable, but it was a prison all the same. Connor visited daily under the guise of checking on the baby. He scrutinized my meals, criticized my posture, and flooded the small cottage with his overwhelming gardenia scent, effectively marking his territory over me and the child I carried. Dempsey, on the other hand, was a ghost. I saw him only from a distance, a tall, imposing figure walking from his car to the mansion, his scent a deep, grounding mix of rich mahogany black pepper and petrichor, never reaching me. By the end of the 2nd month, the physical changes began. The morning sickness was brutal, but it was something else that started to alarm me. A strange, vibrating warmth settled at the base of my neck, right where my dormant scent glands lay. It felt like a phantom limb, waking up, prickling with pins and needles. I mentioned it to Dr. Pendleton during a routine ultrasound. "It's likely just the massive influx of alpha hormones from the fetus," the doctor explained, adjusting his glasses as he looked at the monitor. "Dempsey is a highly dominant prime alpha. Carrying his child is flooding your system with a different hormonal cocktail than your body is used to. It might cause some localized inflammation, near the glandular tissue. Nothing to worry about. But it wasn't just inflammation. It happened during week 12. A torrential rainstorm had knocked out the power to the guest house. Shivering and unable to sleep, I wrapped myself in an old, faded flannel shirt I had stolen from Dempsey years ago, the only piece of him I had secretly kept. I was in the kitchen trying to light a candle when the back door of the cottage suddenly clicked open. Orlaith. I jumped, dropping the match. Dempsey stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his broad shoulders. He held a high-powered flashlight. The security grid showed the backup generator for this cottage failed, he said, his voice gruff. I came to check. I'm fine, I said quickly, wrapping my arms around my stomach, which was just beginning to show a tiny, undeniable swell. You didn't have to come out in the storm. Dempsey stepped further into the kitchen, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the dark. As he moved closer, he suddenly froze. The flashlight dipped, illuminating the floorboards instead of my face. The air in the small room shifted violently. The faint, comforting smell of rain from outside was suddenly overpowered by a scent so rich, so intoxicatingly complex, that my own mouth watered. It smelled of crushed cedar wild honey and the crisp, clean ozone of a lightning strike. It took me a terrifying second to realize the scent wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from me. Dempsey took a slow, agonizing step forward. His breathing turned ragged. The polished, composed CEO vanished, replaced by an alpha entirely at the mercy of his biology. He dropped the flashlight. It rolled under the table, casting erratic shadows against the walls. What? Dempsey choked out his voice, thick, gravelly, and deep with a primal resonance that made my knees weak. What is that? I don't know. I lied, panic rising in my chest. I backed up until my hips hit the kitchen counter. The heat radiating from my neck was unbearable now, a physical burning sensation, as years of scar tissue and dormancy broke open, flooded by the life growing inside me. You. Dempsey closed the distance between us in 2 long strides. He didn't touch me, but he leaned in his nose, hovering mere inches from the curve of my neck. He inhaled deeply, a desperate, shuddering breath that seemed to pull the very air from my lungs. Dom, stop, I whispered, terrified by the raw hunger in his eyes. You smell, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips before lifting to meet my eyes. The confusion and longing in his expression were heartbreaking. You smell like mine. You smell like home. I'm not yours anymore. I said the words, tasting like ash. I'm just the surrogate. I smell like this because of your baby. He blinked, the harsh reality of my words snapping him back. He stumbled backward, dragging a trembling hand through his wet hair. The intoxicating scent of wild honey and cedar still saturated the room, mixing dangerously with his own spiking mahogany and pepper pheromones. It was a perfect, devastating match. A true mate's blend. Dempsey struggled for words, his chest heaving. I have to get the generator fixed. He turned and practically fled the cottage, disappearing into the storm. I slid down the front of the kitchen cabinets until I hit the floor, burying my face in my hands. The pregnancy had done the impossible. It had healed my broken biology. I was finally producing a scent, and it was a scent specifically tuned to the alpha who had thrown me away. But as I sat there trembling in the dark, a horrifying realization washed over me. If Connor, with his artificial dominance and deep insecurities, found out that I wasn't just a scentless vessel, but a fully realized Omega capable of intoxicating his fiancée, he wouldn't just take the baby. He would destroy me completely. Orlaith paced the length of the guest house living room, his hands trembling as he hugged his arms tightly across his chest. The storm outside had passed, but the tempest inside him was only just beginning. Since Dempsey's abrupt departure, the night before, Orlith's newly awakened scent had become impossible to contain. The rich, heady aroma of crushed cedar wild honey and ozone filled the small cottage, clinging to the fabrics and lingering in the air like a thick, undeniable declaration of his biological identity. For years, the medical consensus from top specialists, including the renowned Dr. Samuel Richards at the Mayo Clinic's Reproductive Endocrinology Department, had been definitive Orlith's glands were permanently scarred. Yet the life growing inside him had somehow catalyzed a miraculous healing. However, this miracle was a death sentence for the fragile, transactional peace he had established with the Reed family. Desperation drove Orlith to the medicine cabinet. He rummaged through the prescribed prenatal vitamins, searching for anything that might mask the pheromones. There was nothing. If Connor walked through that door for his daily condescending inspection, the facade would shatter. A sharp knock on the front door made Orlith freeze. He instinctively placed a protective hand over his slightly rounded stomach. "Orlith, open up, it's Dr. Pendleton." Relief washed over him quickly, followed by a sharp spike of anxiety. He unlocked the door, letting the older Beta step inside. Dr. Pendleton barely made it 2 steps into the foyer before he stopped dead in his tracks. The doctor's eyes widened behind his wire-rimmed glasses, his nostrils flaring as he took in the undeniable scent of a prime omega. "Good heavens!" Dr. Pendleton whispered, hastily shutting the door behind him and locking the deadbolt. "Orlith, is this you?" Orlith nodded, tears springing to his eyes. "It started yesterday. I don't know how to stop it, Doctor. You have to give me suppressants. If Connor smells this, he'll terminate the contract. He'll find a way to take the baby early or throw me out into the streets." Dr. Pendleton's face turned an ashen shade of grey. He set his medical bag on the counter, his hands shaking slightly. "I cannot give you suppressants, Orlith. The chemical compounds in standard scent blockers are highly teratogenic. They would cross the placental barrier and cause catastrophic harm to the fetus. You are carrying a prime alpha's child. Your biology is working exactly as it was designed to. But it's Connor's baby," Orlith pleaded, his voice cracking. "My body is just the incubator. Why is it reacting like this?" The doctor looked away, unable to meet Orlith's desperate gaze. The silence stretched thick and suffocating until Dr. Pendleton finally slumped into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. "It isn't," Dr. Pendleton confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Orlith felt the floor drop out from beneath him. "What did you say? Connor's designer scent modifications?" Dr. Pendleton began, keeping his eyes firmly fixed on the floorboards. "The surgeries and chemical therapies he underwent in Switzerland to achieve that perfect gardenia scent. They corrupted his genetic material at a cellular level. His eggs were completely unviable. Every single embryo we attempted to create with Dempsey's sperm fragmented and died within 24 hours. Orlith's breath hitched. "Then whose?" "Yours." Dr. Pendleton admitted a tear slipping down his weathered cheek. "When you and Dempsey were married, you froze several vials of genetic material here at the clinic, hoping for a future treatment. Connor discovered this. He knew Dempsey would call off the wedding if he found out Connor was completely sterile. Connor blackmailed me. He threatened to destroy my practice to expose a massive financial discrepancy I had made years ago to keep this clinic afloat. He forced me to thaw your preserved material, fertilize it with Dempsey's sample, and implant it into you under the guise that it was his." The room spun. Orlith gripped the edge of the counter to keep from collapsing. The child growing inside him, the baby he was legally bound to hand over to the man who had tormented him, was biologically his own. his true biological child with Dempsey. That was why his body had healed. The intense primal connection of carrying his true mate's biological offspring had surged through his dormant system, forcing his scent glands to awaken to protect the pregnancy. "You have to tell Dempsey," Orlith demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous protective register he had never heard from himself before. "I can't," Dr. Pendleton choked out. "Connor has an army of lawyers. He will ruin me, and he will claim you stole the genetic material yourself. He will lock you away for corporate espionage and take custody of the child anyway." Before Orlith could formulate a response, the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway outside shattered the heavy silence. Through the sheer curtains, Orlith saw Connor's silver sports car slam to a halt. Connor emerged, his face twisted into an ugly snarl, clutching a folder of security logs. Connor had seen the security footage of Dempsey visiting the guest house the night before. "He's here," Orlith whispered, his maternal instincts flaring into overdrive. The cedar and honey scent in the room turned sharp, laced with the distinct aggressive ozone of an Omega, preparing to defend their young. "Hide the medical bag," Orlith ordered the doctor. "Do not say a word. I will handle this." Connor didn't bother knocking. He punched the security code into the keypad and shoved the front door open, his artificial gardenia scent rolling into the room like a toxic fog. But the moment Connor crossed the threshold, he hit the invisible wall of Orlith's overwhelming pheromones. Connor stumbled backward, his manicured hands flying to his nose in sheer horror. What is this?" Connor shrieked, his pale blue eyes darting wildly around the room before locking on to Orlith. "What have you done to the air filters? What is that disgusting smell?" Orlith stood tall in the center of the living room, his shoulders squared. He no longer felt like the broken, discarded ex-husband. He felt powerful. "It isn't the air filters, Connor. It's me." Connor's face contorted in disbelief, rapidly shifting from shock to pure, unadulterated rage. "You're lying. You're a defective, barren freak. You don't have a scent." "Things change," Orlith replied coldly, refusing to back down. "This is why Dempsey was here last night," Connor hissed, piecing the puzzle together. He marched toward Orlith, raising a hand as if to strike him. "You pathetic, scheming home-wrecker. You purposely triggered a biological reaction to seduce my fiancé. I'll have you thrown in a federal prison. I'll induce labor right now and take my baby. Touch him, and I will break every bone in your hand." The voice boomed from the open doorway, carrying the lethal, terrifying weight of a prime alpha's absolute authority. Dempsey stood in the threshold, his dark eyes fixed on Connor with a murderous intensity. His scent mahogany black pepper and petrichor flooded the room seamlessly, weaving into Orlith's cedar and honey, creating an impenetrable wall of true mate dominance that forced Connor to his knees. Connor gasped for air, suffocating under the sheer pressure of Dempsey's unleashed aura. Dom, he's trying to steal our baby. Look at him, he's manipulating his hormones." "Shut up!" Dempsey growled, stepping into the room. He didn't look at Connor. His eyes were entirely focused on Orlith, taking in the defiant posture, the protective hand over the stomach, and the intoxicating scent that confirmed everything his primal instincts had been screaming at him since the night before. Dempsey turned his gaze to Dr. Pendleton, who was cowering near the kitchen island. "I ordered a private audit of the clinic's cryogenic logs this morning, Arthur. After I smelled Orlith last night, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The system flagged a manual override in the deep freeze storage unit 3 months ago, a unit registered under my name. Care to explain?" Dr. Pendleton broke completely. Sobbing, the doctor confessed everything. He detailed Connor's threats, the unviable designer eggs, the blackmail, and the illicit thawing of Orlith's genetic material. With every word, the colour drained further from Connor's face. The artificial arrogant mask melted away, leaving behind a terrified, cornered fraud. "It was for you, Dom," Connor cried out, crawling toward Dempsey's polished shoes. "I did it because I loved you. I needed to give you an heir to secure my place in the family. You wouldn't have stayed with me if you knew I was completely barren." Dempsey looked down at Connor with an expression of absolute disgust. "I married Orlith when he was entirely scentless and supposedly barren. I didn't care about biology then. But you violated him. You violated me. You orchestrated a medical assault just to secure a trust fund and a social title." Dempsey pulled his phone from his jacket pocket. "My legal team is already drafting the federal fraud charges. The police are waiting at the front gates. You are trespassing on my property, Connor, and you are threatening my mate and my child." The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. "Mate." 2 private security officers stepped into the cottage, hauling a screaming, thrashing Connor to his feet. His designer clothes were rumpled, his artificial scent souring into something rotten as panic set in. He cursed and spat, vowing revenge, but his threats were empty. The empire he had tried to build on stolen biology was crumbling into dust around him. As Connor was dragged out into the cold autumn air doctor, Pendleton quietly gathered his things, knowing his medical license and his freedom were forfeit. When the door finally clicked shut, leaving only Orlith and Dempsey in the quiet cottage, the heavy alpha dominance in the room instantly vanished. Dempsey's shoulders slumped, the ruthless CEO, suddenly looking incredibly vulnerable. He took a slow, hesitant step toward Orlith. "Ollie, Don't," Orlith said, his voice firm, holding up a hand to stop him. The cedar and honey scent remained strong, wrapping around him like a protective shield. Dempsey stopped, the pain in his dark eyes palpable. "I was a fool. I let my family's expectations poison my mind. I let them convince me that I needed a traditional Omega, an heir, a perfect image. But the moment I smelled you last night, it was like waking up from a coma. I realized exactly what I threw away. You threw away a person, Dempsey." Orlith said, the years of suppressed pain finally surfacing in his voice. "You threw me away because I wasn't enough. Now that my biology is functioning, now that I smell like your perfect match, and I'm carrying your biological child, suddenly you want me back." "No," Dempsey said, his voice raw. He dropped to his knees on the hardwood floor, submitting entirely to the Omega standing before him. It was an act of absolute surrender unheard of for an alpha of his status. "I don't want you back because of the scent or the baby. I want you back because I have been living in hell for 2 years without you. The scent only proved what I have always known. In my soul, you are the only one for me. I will spend the rest of my life earning your forgiveness, Orlith. However long it takes. Whatever you demand." Orlith looked down at the man who had broken him, the man who was now kneeling at his feet, offering him the world. The power dynamic had completely shifted. Orlith was no longer a victim, a scentless reject, or a disposable surrogate. He was a prime Omega, holding the future of the Reed dynasty in his womb, and he held Dempsey's heart squarely in his hands. "You will move me back into the main house," Orlith commanded quietly, his voice carrying a new, unwavering authority. "You will transfer 50% of the estate into my name, completely independent of your family's trusts, and you will sleep in the guest wing until I decide you are worthy of sharing my bed again." Dempsey looked up, a faint, reverent smile touching his lips. "Yes, anything." Orlith placed both hands on his swelling stomach, breathing in the scent of rain mahogany and his own sweet cedar. He had survived the worst they could throw at him, and he had emerged victorious. The karma was absolute, the justice poetic. He had reclaimed his child, his dignity, and his rightful place, not as a submissive partner, but as an equal force to be reckoned with. The harvest of lies had been cleared, leaving fertile ground for a new beginning strictly on his own terms. Did this intense Omegaverse drama keep you on the edge of your seat? The twists, the true mate bond, and the ultimate karma make this a story to remember. If you loved Orlith's journey to claiming what is rightfully his, please smash that like button, share this video with your fellow drama lovers, and do not forget to subscribe for more thrilling high-stakes audio stories every single week right now.